Hi, I'm Whitney Espich, the CEO of the MIT Alumni Association, and I hope you enjoy this digital production created for alumni and friends like you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Grace Chua, SMO8, and and welcome to the MIT Faculty Forum. It looks like we have over 100 of you online to watch this webinar. And we're looking forward to having Professor Tom Montville on this, speak on the topic of food labeling language, a polyglot's primer. As I've mentioned, my name is Grace Chua. I'm a senior consultant at Kite Insights. We're a research and communications agency that helps organizations to stand up for good in the world. And I'll be serving as your moderator for today's presentation. This presentation is being brought to you by the MIT Alumni Association and is sponsored in part by the MIT Federal Credit Union, MIT Professional Education, and MIT Sloan Executive Education. Now, just as a reminder, we welcome your questions during this chat. Please feel free to use the tools at the bottom of your screen in Zoom. There's a Q&A feature on in the middle of your toolbar at the bottom. Now, for those of us viewing on YouTube, you can add your questions to the comments field next to the stream. And we also encourage you to engage on social media and tweet using the hashtag #MITBetterWorld. That's #MITBetterWorld, all one word. And we'll try to get as many questions as we can. Now, I'm delighted to introduce our featured presenter for today, Professor Thomas Montville, PhD 79. Professor Montville is the Distinguished Professor Emeritus of Food Science at Rutgers University. He received his PhD from MIT in course 20, his BS from Rutgers, and he was a senior research microbiologist at the USDA before joining the Rutgers faculty. Professor Montville has deciphered the science in food for thousands of liberal arts undergraduates and has provided numerous expert opinions for complex litigations involving natural claims. He is a fellow of the American Academy of Microbiology and a fellow of the Institute of Food Technologists. His pioneering research on naturally occurring antimicrobials was recognized by the IFT's Bernard L. Ozer Award for Food Ingredient Safety. Professor Montville also received the President's Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Association for Food Protection. And with that, I now turn things over to Professor Montville. Professor Montville, please.
Good afternoon. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about natural foods and organic and what's the difference. How to read labeling claims on food packages, a little bit about dietary supplements, and then finally a little bit about expiration dates and what they mean. Excuse me. You've heard about me. I'd like to tell you a little bit about what I do. The first thing is exactly what food science is. It's not nutrition, please. Food science, I like to say, is everything that happens from the time a food comes out of the ground, because before that, it's agriculture. And once it comes into the mouth, it becomes nutrition. Food science is an inherently multidisciplinary field where engineers have to know about heat and mass transfer, chemists have to know about the Maillard reaction, and microbiologists have to know how to keep food safe from foodborne pathogens. Now, my advisor told me never give a talk without working in a little bit of your research. So I'd like to just say a few words about these natural antimicrobial peptides. These peptides, called bacteriocins, are produced by the same bacteria that ferment milk to give us yogurt, vegetables to give us sauerkraut, cheeses, fermented meats, and so on. Some of these bacteria produce naturally antimicrobial peptides that work against foodborne pathogens like Listeria monocytogenes. One of the great things about being in a multidisciplinary department is that I've been able to collaborate with Rick Ludischer, a physical chemist, and George Carman, a molecular biologist who specializes in membrane. This is briefly the mechanism. These ovals are the peptides. They first bind to the lipid bilayer, insert, and then form pores. We demonstrated this binding step by using the deduced structure of PDosin PA1, which was done in collaboration with Ronnie Shapira at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And we were interested in how this molecule bound to the lipid membrane. So we synthesized the whole molecule, the leader, and the hairpin tool, hairpin turn, and found that it was the positively charged amino acids, histidine and lysine down at the bottom here, that interacted with the negatively charged phospholipid membrane. We also found it was poration rather than detergent, because if we loaded artificial cells with a fluorescent marker compound and treated it with a detergent, it was immediately released as the cells lysed, whereas if we used bacteriocin, there was a time and concentration dependent release characteristic of poration mechanisms. So, natural and organic foods. Why do consumers want natural or organic foods? That's probably a question best answered for sociologists, but it's very clear from the marketplace that consumers do want natural and organic foods. And the food industry, being market-driven, makes whatever the consumer wants. So you see here a brief graph showing the growth of all foods over a 2-year period. You can see this is pretty dismal, being less than 2% growth, whereas for natural and organic foods, there's 10% growth, which is increased in just 2 years to between 12 and 14%. So if you're a food manufacturer and you have a conventional food and can make it natural, you have a big boost in your sales and your profitability. Now, there is a difference between organic and natural foods. Organic foods are grown under the Organic Food Production Act. This was made by the USDA Economic Research Service to prevent fraud from just anyone claiming their food is organic. It wasn't based on science, but again, on the process by which the foods were grown. It has nothing to do with the product, the quality, the microbial safety, or the nutrition, all of which are the same as for conventional foods. This picture down here just shows an organic farm. I wanted you to have the feel that organic farms can be as big and as mechanized as industrial farms. Now, the law for organics is pretty straightforward. The first is that there can't be any genetically modified organisms. This is taken very strictly. If you've watched CSI, you hear a lot about fruit from the forbidden tree. Under the current regulations, any compound or ingredient downstream from a plant or animal that's been genetically modified is deemed genetically modified and can't be used for organic. There's a discussion under place now where foods that have been purified or downstream, such as vodka, where we take the potatoes, ferment them, and distill off the liquor, could still be certified organic, even if they contain, the original potatoes contain genetically modified organisms for pesticide resistance. The second is no irradiation. Irradiation was pioneered at MIT back in the 50s. It's been demonstrated safe, effective, a real solution to some microbial problems, such as the growth of E. coli 0157H7 in meat products. Consumers have pretty farly rejected it because they're afraid of radiation, radioactivity, and so on. So Wegmans uses a process using electron beams to irradiate their meat. Radiation is also being discussed for the pasteurization of leafy greens, which are another microbial susceptible food. The third is no synthetic feeds, hormones, pesticides, unless they're on the list. And I'll show you what the list is in a moment. No plastic pellets that make the animals feel full. No antibiotics. There's a tremendous concern about the growth of antibiotic resistance. This is spilling over into conventional animal husbandry, where the food industry has realized that they can get a premium for foods grown without antibiotics. And you'll see on packages now, NAE, no antibiotics ever. Excuse me. Finally, no chemical fertilizers, although the use of green manure poses some microbial hazards, and animal welfare. I think animal welfare is a legitimate reason to eat organic, and here you can see a bunch of free-range chickens. The allowed list contains many ingredients and compounds you might be surprised at. The first is that it allows synthetic pesticides like strychnine. Secondly, it allows chemicals like sodium hypochlorite or bleach, which is a great sanitizer, or hydrogen peroxide, sulfates, sodium silicate, and so on. It also allows some antibiotics like streptomycin, which parenthetically was discovered at Rutgers, and tetracycline to control fire blight in apples. So there are some antibiotics used with organic foods. And if the foods qualify under these regulations, they can be stamped with the USDA organic seal. The USDA organic seal can be used if a product is more than 95% organic. Here you can see the USDA seal down at the bottom here, and with it, the non-GMO verified symbol. If a food contains more than 70% organic, it can be labeled as made with organic, but doesn't carry the USDA symbol. In order to be certified as organic, a farmer has to use organic practices for 3 years and use these practices before they can certify for organic. So there's a transitional period where the farmer is using organic methods but can't charge the premium for organic foods. And this is starting to be recognized, I think, by very knowledgeable consumers as transitional foods. And you can see a lot of other labeling that this is maybe over-labeled, sustainable farmlands, fair trade, and so on. There are a variety then of symbols you can find on your food. As I've mentioned, the USDA organic covers all of the foods that meet the USDA requirements. There is a non-GMO product, so foods can not be organic but still be produced without the use of genetically modified organisms. There are other symbols that just pop up. This 100% organic, environmentally friendly is being sued by the FDA because only this organic symbol is allowed to denote organic foods. Down here we have a labeling claim made with all natural, no artificial preservatives, no artificial flavors, and that segues us into natural foods. Natural is certainly a marketing claim. Here you see all natural beef, all natural Snapple, and all sorts of other foods, peanut butters, salad dressings, that can charge a premium by being labeled natural. There is no legal definition for natural when used in food ingredients. So this has a big field for litigation. The FDA has considered the term natural to mean nothing artificial or synthetic in the area of flavors. And you see this is a little bit of a circular argument. It's natural if it's not synthetic, and natural if it's not artificial. Synthetic is pretty clear. What's artificial is not. What's normally expected to be in the food is something that is not litigated, because who knows what consumers normally expect to find in a food. This definition, nothing artificial or synthetic, has been considered the best thinking of the FDA. So it's been used in litigation for the claims that certain food ingredients are not, in fact, natural. The FDA is currently requesting comments on the use of the term natural on food labeling. They're asking comments on, should natural even be regulated, or is it just fluffery? If it is regulated and defined, should it be narrowly defined or broadly defined as just nothing synthetic, and so on? My guess is that the FDA will come up with a definition, and it will be limited to nothing synthetic, because synthetic is inarguable. It either undergoes some chemical reactions or not. A number of consumer suits have challenged different food ingredients. High fructose corn syrup is a frequent target because it's invented, made in a factory, and does not occur in nature, which is all true. High fructose corn syrup was invented in the 1970s with the advent of thermostable amylase and thermostable glucose isomerase. Like all other foods, it is made in a factory, and like things like bread and beer, it does not occur in nature. A little bit about the chemistry of high fructose corn syrup. Sucrose is made of the monomers glucose and fructose. Starch is just a polymer of glucose. Corn syrup uses amylases to break down corn syrup into glucose monomers. And in the production of high fructose corn syrup, some of the glucose monomers are isomerized into fructose. In high fructose corn syrup, it contains about 55% fructose and 45% glucose by virtue of some enrichment of the fructose fraction. But when we say high fructose, it's not enormously high levels and not much different than the 50-50 we find in compounds like honey. Nonetheless, food manufacturers are selling and taking advantage of the marketplace for this with no high fructose corn syrup. Although you can see that in some labels, high fructose corn syrup is just replaced with corn syrup, or in very clever labels, it's replaced with dehydrated sugarcane juice. And we all know what that is. Another compound that's been criticized as being synthetic is citric acid. Citric acid, in fact, is made microbially using, depending on when you got your biochemistry, the Krebs cycle, citric acid cycle, or tricarboxylic acid cycle. In this cycle, the first compound made is citric acid. If there's a mutation to prevent its formation into isocitrate, the citrate can leak out of the cell and have extracellular citric acid. About 90% of the citric acid currently sold in the United States is made from microbially. We use the same citric acid in our bodies. We produce citrate in our bodies. Judges seem to understand that it's natural if, in fact, we use the same pathway in our body. There's other litigation. Hornell Brewing Company are the manufacturers of Arizona. They're a repeat client of mine. They've been sued over the use of ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C. It's made by fermentation of sorbitol. It's been sued over the use of gelatin, which is just made by the hydrolysis of collagen, or xanthan gum, which is made by Xanthomonas campestris as an extracellular polysaccharide during fermentations. So the take-home lesson on organic is that, being the gold standard, all organic is natural and non-GMO, but not all natural is organic, and non-GMO doesn't have to be organic or natural. We'll move on to health claims for food. There are several categories of health claims. The most widely understood or misunderstood of these are the nutritional labels that go on the side panel. These were dictated by the Nutritional Labeling and Education Act back in 1990. So this label has been around for a long time. It's being updated now to this label as of 2016, will be required to be on foods in 2020. So you'll see both of these labels now. Big change, emphasis on serving size, emphasis on calories, probably due to the widely cited mantra that a calorie is a calorie. It takes the amount of energy to raise 1 gram of water, 1 degree centigrade, and that's it. But when it comes to physiology, not all calories are the same. A calorie ingested from 100 grams of whole wheat bread is different than the 100 calories ingested by high fructose corn syrup. The efficacy of calories is even affected by our gut microbiome. There's some classic experiments done where fecal material was taken from human twins, one of which was obese and one of which was lean. These fecal extracts were administered to germ-free mice, and you could see the mouse that received the fecal extract from the fat twin became fat, and the one that received the extract from the thin twin became thin. Another thing that's different in these labels are the idea of carbohydrates. We know now that dietary fibers produce certain health benefits, and that total sugars are generally considered bad. The consumption of sugar in the 1800s, it was less than 20 pounds per year. It's increased exponentially so that now in the last 30 years, it's increased to 130 pounds of sugar per person per year. So added sugars are becoming something that consumers look at very closely. The National Nutritional Labeling and Education Act limits the number of allowable claims, and the allowable claims have to be for foods where there's a significant scientific agreement. In other words, a consensus that this function does take place as a result of this structure. Under the NLEA, the manufacturers have to prove that ingredients and additives are safe. This may seem obvious to you that manufacturers have to prove foods are safe, but you'll see with supplements, it's in fact the other way around. There are allowable health claims, and all of these have to be pre-approved by the FDA. The allowable claims are those for which there's a sound scientific consensus that things like low saturated fats and cholesterol reduce the risk of heart disease, low fibers reduce the risk of cancer and heart disease. The issue with cancer is that it decreases intestinal transit time, where many benign compounds are converted into carcinogens. Sugar alcohols are not fermented, so they don't form acid, and because they don't form acid, they might reduce the risk of tooth decay. The labels are pretty clear. They do contain the words may or might have this specific benefit. You can't cheat and claim a reduced risk of one thing while including ingredients that increase the risks of something else. So that when you have a food that has an allowable health claim, it can't be high in fats, saturated fats, sodium, or so on. Now, there are qualified health claims. And qualified health claims are a little bit different because they don't require a scientific consensus. there have to be a body of evidence, but a limited body of evidence that suggests that cancer risk is reduced by the presence of antioxidant vitamins. You'll see antioxidants are widely touted on food labels because of the oxidation theory of aging, so that anything that produces an antioxidant would be considered anti-aging. Folic acid has recently been added as an enrichment to bread to prevent neural tube defects. The labeling claims, I personally think, have gotten out of hand. Here we have the old nutritional panel on the side of the package, but on the front of the package, we have 8 different nutritional claims, including the qualified health claim down here, that it may reduce the risk of heart disease. There are other nutritional claims made on, you have to excuse me because I need notes to make sure I get this right. Here we have Ken's light salad dressing. The claims, in order to have a label that says reduced calories, it has to have 25% fewer calories than the calories of a reference food, but it's not quantified as to the number of calories. Low calories have to have less than 50% of the calories of a reference food, and no calorie has to be quantified as less than 5 calories per serving. Sugars is much simpler. Reduced is again 25% less than a reference food. Free is just what it says. There are no sugars at all. Fats are a little complicated. Reduced again means less than 25%. Light means less than 50%. Low is equal to less than 3 grams of fat per serving, and free is less than ½ gram of fat per serving. That covers foods. I'd like to move on to supplements, and I see supplements as being the wild, wild west of the food industry. Food ingredients are covered by the NLEA. Supplements are regulated by the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. Under the DSHEA, there's no need for scientific agreement. There can be 1 or 2 papers or even some studies that the manufacturer has conducted that suggest a certain health benefit, and that's sufficient to use something as a supplement. It should be noted, however, a supplement can't be advertised as preventing, mitigating, or curing something, because preventing, mitigating, or curing are the definitions of a drug. For supplements, the manufacturer doesn't have to prove the safety prior to marketing. So they can take virtually anything, put it in the marketplace until the government proves that it's unsafe, and then can remove it from the marketplace. The legal definition of a dietary supplement is pretty straightforward. It's a supplement not used as a conventional food, so something like Ensure, the nutritional beverage. It's touted now for both young active people and older people, is a food and not a supplement. They can be concentrates and metabolites. Herbs and botanicals, there's a big area of fraud in the use of herbal supplements, in that they can only be verified as authentic by microscopic examination by an expert. So about 70% in some studies, 70% of herbs on the market have contained foreign matter, or in fact, not any herbs at all. Now, the DSHEA amends the Delaney Clause. The amendment of the Delaney Clause is extremely important because in the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, it contains this clause which prohibits any ingredient that causes any cancer in any animal in any amount to be adulterated. So when I tell people I'm a food scientist, they say, oh, you're one of those guys who puts ingredients that cause cancer into foods. I can tell them, no, it's absolutely prohibited to put carcinogens into foods according to the Delaney Clause. However, the Delaney Clause does not cover naturally occurring carcinogens like you get when you grill foods. Under the DSHEA, a supplement is adulterated only if it produces a significant or unreasonable risk, as opposed to any cancer, any animal, any amount. And instead of any amount, it's when used according to directions. So when there were issues with ephedra, the company was able to keep it on the market by claiming that the illnesses were due when it was not used according to directions. FDA eventually went out in that and withdrew it from the market. Finally, we have some issues of expiration dates, which are all over the place. They range from just the date, and the consumer doesn't know whether this is a date of manufacture, a date of best if used by, or so on. It's just a date. We have use by, and the use by is generally due to some food safety issue. So you'll see use or freeze by, and that means exactly what it says. Check the use or freeze by dates on your refrigerated material, and you'll ensure that you have some period of safety in your refrigerator. We also have a best if used by. This is the most clear designation of a food that is edible, is still perhaps even good, but not at peak quality or peak nutritional quality if it's contained or consumed after the best by date. There's ambiguous labeling recommended for use by. This is, I think, confusing to the consumer because it doesn't differentiate between best if and use by. The FDA is now working on a consolidation of claims where they'll only allow the claim of use by or best if used by. Finally, we have milks that have a sell by date. The sell by date should give you 7 days of safe storage in your refrigerator before it's opened. Once it's opened, it's susceptible to contaminants from the refrigerator or from the consumer, and all bets are off. So that's it for food labeling. There's some it's kind of sarcastic cartoons about where the future of food labeling might go. I've seen on a lawnmower should only be used in a horizontal position, which you think might be funny, but it's only on there because someone in fact has used it vertically as a hedge trimmer. So we can't be too careful about what we say and what we do. Hopefully we won't have to have excessive disclaimers on our food. The mantra for food consumption and good nutrition is just eat a wide variety of foods in moderation. And with that, I'll take questions.
Great, thank you so much, Professor Montville. And I feel like I learned a lot and the audience did too. We have a ton of questions coming in right now through the question and answer tool in Zoom. I'd like to, we have a cluster of questions, I think, about food allergen labeling. A number of questions like, is it legal to use only a contains allergen, certain allergens, say peanuts, to include cross-contaminants, but that aren't an ingredient but are there in trace amounts? What is the law around, for example, saying may contain tree nuts versus specifying the type of tree nut? And what is the what is actually meant when the label says may contain, or this is manufactured on shared equipment? How, can we quantify those risks?
That's a good question. There's a wide concern about allergens. And some food companies have large facilities that make foods that contain, and the allergens, you know, milk is an allergen, eggs are an allergen, shellfish, soy, wheat. So it's not just peanuts. So the use of a label that says may contain depends on the processing line, or made in a facility that produces some specific allergen, I think gives the broadest warning to the consumer. However, like I said, if a food contains wheat, milk, or eggs, it's not going to be labeled as an allergen, and the consumer is just going to have to know if they're allergic to those to avoid those foods by reading the ingredient panel.
There's also a cluster of, thanks, Professor Montville. As I think some of us in the audience are parents of children, especially who have food allergens, and so this is something that we pay very close attention to. There's another question, sort of cluster of questions about, emerging trends and what the definitions are of certain terms, such as, are there any legal definitions of free range, cage free, and pasture raised? Are there any legal definitions of low carb or keto?
I know there's no definition for low carb or keto. In terms of, for example, cage free, I know there's not. And cage free, I've seen pictures of quote unquote cage free facilities where the chickens are literally shoulder to shoulder in a huge barn that contains maybe 3,000 chickens. So these are poorly regulated.
That's kind of troubling for those of us who worry about animal welfare.
I think free range does mean free range, and that's what I look for when I'm concerned about animal welfare in eggs. And that's another I think point on why food manufacturers are going towards organic and natural and free range. Conventional, in my ShopRite, you can get on sale conventional eggs for 99 cents a dozen, where the farmer's best organic free range chicken eggs run for about $4.50. So there's a huge premium for these.
Right, and so there's certainly a commercial motivation to get them labeled this way. So perhaps you might have seen some of the questions about fraud in these claims. Some people there's a question about, to what extent can we really trust that foods labeled as organic are genuinely organic? For example, at farmers markets, people have seen, one questioner has seen organic fraud going on, where they take off the box and here's the food presented as organic. To what extent can we trust organic labeling and claims in the US?
Well, there are two parts of that. If there are that USDA organic symbol, those are verified by third-party auditors, so you can be very confident that it's organic. When it comes to fruit and produce stands, a farmer may in fact be growing his food as organic, but to get the verification and legal as organic costs about $5,000, which is prohibitive to most small farmers. So they just label it organic with the big cardboard sign. And the trust there really comes from the consumer trusting the farmer that's selling the produce. So there is potential for fraud there, and it has to do with trust between the consumer and the farmer.
Right. And coming back to the idea of trust, where do you see consumer demand for these foods going, and to what extent is sort of trust or mistrust in conventional food systems behind that?
That's another question for a sociologist. But the food industry is aware of this consumer distrust of general foods and Kellogg's and General Mills and the other generals. So a lot of the food companies are buying up smaller companies like Nature Valley, and they're selling them under the name of the smaller company. And somewhere you can see in fine print that it's in fact owned by General Mills or General Foods. But the food companies are very aware of this, which runs, I think, counter to the big trend of consolidation in the food industry. So there's some tension between the consolidation and the consumer perception of bad is big, big is bad.
Right. And so, obviously consumers seem to be paying a premium for organic or natural labeled food. Why is it that companies can demand such a premium for organic or labeled food? To what extent is that pricing due to the organic processes used to produce the food, and to what extent is that just commercial?
There is a supply and demand issue, so that the supply of organic foods is less than the demand. And sometimes there's a demand for some organic ingredient, and it's just not available commercially because it takes that 3-year transition period. Does the increase in price, is it warranted by the increased price of production or consumer demand? Is it predatory? I don't know whether it's predatory or not, but I guess basic economics tell you that the price of something is what the willing consumer is willing to pay and the producer is willing to sell for. I personally don't believe in the premium, except when I buy my eggs.
Great. Sort of moving on to questions about supplements. Where should consumers seek out accurate information for supplement quality and content and the claims on the label?
That's a tough question to answer. I've seen some of them start to have the U.S. pharmaceutical symbol on them. Some of them, I think the big companies, you can be pretty sure are containing what they say they're containing. But aside from that, it is the wild, wild west when it comes to supplements, and you can never really be sure of what you're getting or how much of it.
And so, out of curiosity, what's behind this divergence in, the food labeling has all of these very strict rules, but supplement labeling is the Wild West. What's the history behind that?
The history is the NLEA regulates food ingredients and was originally going to be applied to supplements, but there was a tremendous consumer outcry that the government's going to take away our supplements. They're going to take away the pills we need to survive on. So there was a political pressure, which resulted in the legislation of the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. So there's really two separate set of laws governing foods and supplements, where the supplements, the regulation is very, very loose.
That's really interesting. And sort of disturbing as well. There's another question, a set of questions about the safety of food. And when you label something as best buy, that says, yes, the food is at peak taste or peak nutritional content before that best buy date. But what's the consensus? Is there any consensus about what happens to foods beyond that best buy date?
Beyond the best buy date, it's just a quality issue. Beyond the user freeze by date, it can become a safety issue. There's an organism called Listeria monocytogenes that's the leading cause of microbial recalls. And this organism is very different because it grows in the cold. So the concern is that if you keep the food in the cold for an extended period of time, this Listeria monocytogenes could grow into sufficient numbers to cause an infection and illness.
Okay, so there's a clear safety issue on, say, a
Yeah.
package of chicken that has a freeze by, versus if your package of crackers says best by, after that, perhaps it just gets a little stale.
Yeah, I had my daughter go through my pantry one day and she said, "Dad, I'm throwing out anything that's older than me." And I won't tell you how old she was at the time.
Were you still eating it?
I was still eating it because it was best if used by.
Fair.
And I am
And
in foods, there's actually a physiological characteristic of people as tasters and non-tasters. So tasters are genetically sensitive to bitter compounds like you find in saccharin or broccoli or things like that. Non-tasters are genetically insensitive to these bitter compounds. And I'm a non-taster. So if the taste deteriorates a little bit, I never know.
well, that's lucky, I think. I just want to reassure the audience that whatever questions that Professor Montville is not able to get to currently, we'll try and send to him for him hopefully to comment on or answer.
And I'll do my best to get back to those over the next couple of days.
Yeah. There's a question coming in about, and this is another allergy question or sensitivity question from somebody who is sensitive to glutamate. But they are finding that there's no labeling of flavors that are made from other sources of glutamate. Do companies have an obligation to disclose these sources of natural glutamate?
The brief answer is no. And this has to do with several natural compounds. So for example, Parmesan cheese is about 30% glutamic acid. Nitrites and nitrates are looked down upon as possible carcinogens when they're added to meats because they form nitrosamines. But celery contains probably 4 to 8-fold more nitrate than does the added nitrite. So you'll see some cured meat products contain no added nitrates except for those naturally contained in celery. And they actually put celery juice in the product rather than chemical nitrite.
Right. And so therefore this person should, where can they find information about the naturally occurring?
They just have to dig it out. I guess Google.
Okay. And kind of looking ahead, what trends do you expect to see in consumer goods, in food related labeling beyond just natural and organic?
The trend is towards what's called green labels, the fewest possible ingredients with the fewest possible syllables are what consumers are increasingly looking for. It goes back to this Michael Pollan adage that if it contains chemicals that you can't pronounce, you shouldn't be eating them, which of course is false. Michael Pollan has done a lot of harm.
Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, the food we eat is historically the most plentiful, safest, and least expensive food in the history of the world. If that bothers you, you can certainly spend more spend more money to get a higher quality of food. But for the most part, people don't want to do that. They want the free lunch.
What about the, is there evidence, for example, that there's a health difference between the way high fructose corn syrup affects our bodies and other forms of sugar affect our bodies?
Yes. I've opined many times that high fructose corn syrup is natural, but I've never said that it's particularly good for us. Fructose is metabolized differently than glucose, and there's evidence that when fructose is metabolized, it's more likely to be shunted off into the production of lipids and fats. Again,
Right.
I should stop there because I may be held against me in court someday.
Okay, that's fair. I think that unless there are any other further questions, we will probably, do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to make? Well,
one of my colleagues who is a risk analyst likes to say that the risk of eating is much, much less than the risk of not eating. The food we eat is good for us. It's safe. It's low cost. The food industry is vested in producing safe foods. Food scientists eat the same foods as everybody else, and we feed them to our kids.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Montville. On behalf of the Alumni Association, I just want to thank everybody in the audience for tuning into this faculty forum online. We'll be sure to forward all questions to Professor Montville, and you can continue to tweet about today's chat and using the hashtag MITBetterWorld, and send other follow-up questions or feedback to alumnilearn@mit.edu. That's alumnilearn@mit.edu. This webinar, I understand, will also be made available online later. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. And for more information on how to connect with the MIT Alumni Association, please visit our website.